Hello. All right. In this episode, you'll find out how to sell your home with a realtor. Ding, 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 ding.
Tony, what steps would somebody take to sell their home with a realtor if they haven't sold a house before, or it's been a really long time and they've forgotten what the process is?
If it was me, I'd just phone me. But if it wasn't me, I'd probably contact friends and family, look for recommendations. I think that's how most good realtors kind of get their referrals. I'd also, look to see who's the most prolific realtor in the area, or, one of the top performers in my area. And then what most people do is, even if it's a few years later, they'll phone the realtor that they used before. And typically that realtor, even if they've retired, will have, some sort of way to forward potential contacts that come in to whoever they've referred their business or sold their business to. So they'd be the three sources of potential realtors that a buyer or a potential seller, should use.
So I find I've got 3 or 5 realtors that I think might be a fit. Do I interview them? How does that work? How do I whittle it down? Yeah,
normally what I do, 5 realtors, 3 realtors is enough to talk to, but 5 realtors, I'd sort of whittle that down. My general rule of thumb is, pick 3 realtors. And what I say is, probably the family member that you have that just became a realtor, call them. Your last realtor that you use, call them. And then whatever realtors kind of you notice in the community is good with marketing, that kind of stuff, does a lot of sales in your area, I'd phone them. Of those 3 realtors, I would then interview them and, just kind of see how well prepared they are, see what they put together as far as comparable listings, that kind of stuff. Let them give you their spiel on marketing, that kind of thing. And then, it's quite a personal thing, selling your house. So you want it to be a good fit. So you want to go with the realtor, I think, that you're comfortable, is knowledgeable in the area, knows what they do, and has a little bit of experience, and you feel like is a good personality for you to work with.
When you're doing the interviews with the realtors, when they come in and do their listing presentation, how would you suggest somebody deals with getting 3 wildly different valuations on a home?
Be wary of an agent that comes in, if you're interviewing the 3, gives you a substantially higher price that they think they can get for it, and then asks you to sign a very long listing contract, because probably that's going to be their strategy. If someone comes in and they're substantially more than the other realtors, that's called, what we call in the business, buying a listing. So if someone was to do that, they'd come in, they'd know they're up against maybe a couple of other realtors that potentially sell a bit more, or a little bit more savvy, or a little bit more able to do marketing, or whatever it is. They're going to come in and they're going to know that they're a realtor that maybe struggles in those areas, and their strategy, and this is a strategy that's employed all across the province and probably all across the world, is they come in and they buy a listing. So your house might be worth 1.2 million, say. They'll come in and say, I think I can get you 1.35 million. However, I want to list your house for a year. And during that time, they're either banking on, if it's a seller's market, they're either banking on the market catching up to the price that they're telling you can get, or they'll slowly grind you down by going, this is the feedback we got, and this is what is a reason why we have to get your price back down. That over time will probably be effective, because everything will sell with the right amount of exposure and time. But depending on what your goal is, what your reason is for selling the home, that may not work with with what you want to do as a next step. And you want to keep your listing contract short. So the minimum in BC that you can do, or in Greater Vancouver, in the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, is a 60-day listing contract. When I list a home, I don't do it for more typically than 60 days, because if I haven't got action in that time, something's wrong. Either I haven't got enough exposure, or it's priced too high.
The seller has sat down and interviewed these 3 realtors. They've picked one that they like the best, and now they're going to move forward with the sale. The realtor looks after the marketing and the pricing and the signage and all the rest. What should the seller do to participate in the sale?
So once you've listed the property, you're going to get photos and videos and that kind of stuff done. And prior to getting that done, it's good to declutter and kind of get the house tidied up where it needs to be done. Do things that maybe you've been putting off. If you've got a squeaky floorboard, fix it. If you've needed to paint a pantry wall, paint it. Just get it ready. Really good clean is recommended. And then once you've done that, you really want to try to maintain it, because you're going to have open houses, and you're going to have people coming to see the property. When showings happen, take off. No one likes really a owner sitting around listening to what they say, and sometimes that does put off the to the buyers from really telling their agent exactly what they feel about the place. So keep it clean, accommodate showings, and then take off when showings happen.
Everything goes really well. The marketing works. You get an offer. What happens now?
All right, so when you get an offer, depending on the market and everything else, there's probably going to be subjects on it. Typical subjects are subject to financing. Subject to financing means that there probably is going to be an appraisal request. So an appraisal is not like a CMA. So when you first get the realtors come in, they do a CMA, which is what they think the correct list price is and what the home's going to sell for. Once you get to the stage where you've got an offer, they're going to need an appraisal. And the reason they need that is the bank will only lend on the appraised value of a home. So if you're in a super hot market typically the bank will use the assessment, the BC assessment, as a gauge for this. So if you're buying a house for 1.2 million and the BC assessment is 1.4 million, typically the bank will look at that and they may or may not need an appraisal because it looks like that you're buying it at a price which they're safe lending on. If the BC assessment say $1 million and you're buying it for 1.4 million, then they're going to definitely want an appraisal because they're going to want to know if the value's in that. You can't overpay for a house and have the bank finance it, because if you stop making the payments and the bank has to foreclose on it, they need to know they're going to get their money back. So the appraisal is going to be a big one. If you get an appraisal, make sure you accommodate it, let them come in. That's necessary for them to do it. The other subject's probably going to be an inspection, and depending on where you live, there could be a septic inspection on there as well, or they might want to, have a guarantee that there aren't any buried oil tanks, that kind of thing. So there's a litany of potential subjects on there, but the main one would probably be inspection and appraisal.
What if they do the inspection and the appraisal and there's a problem? What happens there? Does the deal fall apart, or do you renegotiate at that point?
If it doesn't appraise out right, then the option there would be for the buyer to come up with more of a down payment to cover the spread between what they're wanting to pay for the place and what it appraised at. Or if it appraises, below that, they could potentially go back to the seller and ask for a reduction in price so that, the bank will finance it and move from there. That's rare for that to happen. Normally, I've maybe seen that a couple of times, and that was only with B lenders out of hundreds of, transactions I've done. So that would be pretty rare. What does happen from time to time is they will do an inspection and something will come up that is what's considered a material latent defect. So when you list a house, one of the things that the realtor is going to ask you to fill out is what's called a property disclosure statement. And that's basically you disclosing anything you know that's wrong with the place so that the buyer is aware of that. So that could be anything. It could be, that there's bats living in the attic. That there was a leak in the roof a while ago that you haven't fixed, and now it's summer, but that's probably going to come back. It could be anything that that's a defect with the house that you're aware of. So that's kind of the precursor to an inspection. So you look at that looks pretty good. You write the offer on the house as a buyer, and then you order an inspection. So that's going to be a licensed building inspector that comes in on a certain day, probably takes between 3 and 6 hours, depending on the size of the house and property to do it. They do the inspection, they come back and they say, there was these 3 things, or, they basically check everything where these are the major things that are a problem. And if they came back with something that was substantial that would justify the buyer asking for a price change because it's a material latent defect, they can ask for a price change, or they can ask for the seller to fix this prior to completion. So it could go either way. And depending on how serious it is, when they ask for that, for the seller to fix it, they could then say, we're going to do a holdback on completion for this amount of money, just until we verify that this was done correctly. So that would be how a building inspection could result in potentially a price reduction, or the seller having to fix something prior to completion.
At what point is the sale binding?
So once the sale is binding, once the buyer removes their subjects, and pays the deposit. Once the deposit is held in trust, it's a binding deal. That's when you see the signs go up, and then that's what and then that gets reported as sold. Now, touch wood of like I say, the hundreds of transactions I've done, I've never had one go sideways once the deposit's been paid, but that can happen. Although it's unusual for that type of thing to happen. So typically, once the subjects are removed and the deposit's paid, then it's a firm deal.
The deal goes firm. The seller, I guess, has to get ready to move out. What condition do they leave the house in when they leave?
The normal convention is for the house to be clean. So that means, you either clean it well yourself, or in a lot of cases, what will happen, the buyer's agent will put in the contract that the seller agrees to either get it professionally cleaned or clean it to a professional standard prior to leaving.
What happens if the seller leaves something behind at the property after they've moved out?
In a contract, what they ask for is vacant possession. So vacant possession, and it'll dictate that no rubbish or personal debris is left behind. People do it. In some cases they won't want to move, or they'll say, they could probably use a bed and just leave a bed or whatever. But ultimately, in the contract, it's meant to be left clean. If you don't do that, or if you leave stuff behind, whatever the expense and cost to the sellers, whether it be actual physical expense or emotional distress that it causes, or anything else that results from the seller not fulfilling their obligations in the contract, they would then be liable for that. So, for example, if there was a holdback, so if you agree to do something, you don't do it, there's a holdback. After a certain amount of time that would be, detailed in the contract and then worked out by the conveyance lawyers, you would lose whatever the cost was that was being held back. If there was no holdback, and you just didn't clean, or you didn't do what you were supposed to do, or you left a bunch of stuff behind, then the option would be for the buyer to sue you and take it to small claims court for whatever, their expense was, which happens all of the time. If you're a seller and you don't do what you're supposed to do, and you do get sued, your realtor will be called in and they'll be asked under oath what you were meant to do, and they'll tell them. So it's very rare that someone can get away with it once they get sued. So it's much, much easier just to do what you're supposed to do when you're moving out. But that being said, a lot of people don't, and that's part of the grey hair that realtors had doing with that.
When the house is sold, at what point does the seller actually see money?
Once the subjects are removed and it's a firm deal and the sold sign goes up. So that's subject removal date, and then between that date and completion date is when you have to pack up your house and move to your new place and get it cleaned and do all that kind of stuff. So once you hit that completion date, that's when the lawyer for the seller and the lawyer for the buyer communicate. And the lawyer for the buyer says, I've got this mortgage money, or I've got the cash for the house, and the lawyer for the seller goes, I've got the title, and they basically do a handshake, and the title gets transferred to the new buyer, and the money goes into the account of the lawyer or the seller. So that's the day that you get your money. The next day, or it could be a week later, depending on how the contract's written, that's possession and adjustment date. And those dates, that's when, someone moves into the house. So that's how that's a difference between the dates. And the adjustment date is when, stuff like if you've prepaid rates or utilities or property taxes or strata fees or that kind of stuff, there's what's called a statement of adjustments that the lawyers go through, and they even out if you've prepaid, say, your property taxes for 4 months that you're not going to be there, that gets credited to you, and then there's all these adjustments done on there. So that's how that works. And in the end, and then in the money that the seller gets, the fees come out of it. So their lawyers fee, the commission and brokerage fees come out of that. Any other things that need to be paid, like say you deferred taxes, that kind of stuff, that gets paid out of that. And then you end up with a statement of adjustments, which details all of the expenses and what you end up getting as a check or deposited into your account. With me, I have a lawyer that I use all the time. I think it's really important to use a lawyer that's experienced in conveyance and real estate conveyance. It's especially important if you're doing, like if you're selling a house of someone, like you're an executor for a state or someone's passed away and you're waiting for probate. Probate in BC, I'm assuming it's similar in other parts of Canada and the rest of the world. It's really important to have a lawyer do that knows what they're doing. I've had experiences in the past where I've been selling a house, the executor has used a lawyer that's a family friend, semi-retired kind of thing to do probate. They've done probate, they've screwed it up numerous times, and that can result in delays for up to, in this particular case, it delayed it for 18 months. So we had an accepted offer on a place from buyers, and it was just subject to probate. So it was only up to the seller to remove the probate, but they hired a lawyer that didn't know what they were doing, and that delayed it for such a long period of time. The interest rates changed and these buyers could no longer buy it. So it ended up costing the executor, I think it worked out to about 15%. They lost because it took so long for the lawyer to get probate done correctly that the market had changed. They lost a bunch of buyers and gone from there. So it is really important. As much as, in my opinion, it's important to work, with an experienced real estate agent that is really experienced in your market. Hopefully that realtor will have a team which has, other professionals that you need through through this process to be able to accomplish what they need to get done to be able to close that deal. So realtors are only really one part. I mean, we do the marketing, we get you the exposure, we hopefully will get you the offer that's good for the house and allows you to move on to that next step in your life, whatever that is. But in the same way, you really do need to make sure you've got other professionals working with you that are competent in their fields as well, because a real estate sale can get tripped up for numerous reasons. So a good lawyer, a good conveyance lawyer is really important as well.
Tony, it's been a couple months since we've talked about listings. What do you have on the market in August?
I don't always have fantastic deals, but I do this month. We've just dropped the price of 1127 Malcolm Creek Road, which is a brand new 6-bedroom, 4-bathroom, split up into an upstairs, downstairs suite situation. Legal suite, which is rare, situated on over an acre in beautiful Roberts Creek. That one has been dropped down to $1,599,000, including GST. You could not buy the land and build it for this. It's a quality build by Clark Hamilton. It's an absolutely gorgeous, and I don't know, how much it's going to last, if it's going to be even available when this comes to air, because I've just dropped the price and I've had like 4 or 5 showings immediately, but that is a steal of a deal. So if you're looking for a great deal, regardless of what the market's doing, regardless of interest rates, it's an absolute great deal, and you should call your realtor and get in there to have a look at that one right away.
It's a gorgeous home. And when we talk about a suite in a house, I think a lot of times people have a thought of what a suite is, but like this is, like it's high ceilings, lots of windows. The entrance is like a walkout basement, a covered walkout basement with a big concrete patio, easy access to the yard. So if you've got a big family or you just want a lot of space, you could easily use the entire home. But then if you did have lots of guests, or maybe your parents are going to live with you, or you want to rent it out as Airbnb or something like that, or as a mortgage helper, the downstairs is gorgeous. Yeah. It's a gorgeous home.
I wish I had the money for it, but alas. In addition to that, we have a few really great deals up on the bluff in Gibsons on Shoal Lookout. We have 302 Shoal Lookout, which is a great lot. It's been on the market for a while. Did get tied up by a potential buyer that wanted to build, but unfortunately, with the recent interest rate hike, he couldn't get his financing together. So that one's available again. Really easy build. Lots of money already invested in getting that ready to build. Across the street from that, we've got that gorgeous log home I talked about last week. That one's, primed, ready for move-in. We've had a lot of interest in that, but amazingly, it's still available at this time. And then just up the road, the old adage where you buy the worst house on the best street, 317 Shoal Lookout is probably fitting that bill. It is a great home. It's got good bones, does need some TLC, does need a reno, but it's on that street and great views. It's really a good opportunity for someone looking to get into the market, and we just dropped the price of that one down to under $1 million, so well below tax assessment. We're getting ready for the right buyer to come along there, and they are motivated sellers. That's an estate sale, so they're looking to get rid of that one. Beyond that, we do have a bunch of new listings that are going to be coming up in Lower Gibsons, some nice holding properties. There are things that we're bringing on that are priced appropriately given the current market. So I guess watch this space if you are looking to invest or looking to get a good deal on BC's beautiful Sunshine Coast, and hopefully the right place will pop up for you.
I want to go back to the 3 on Shoal Lookout. I love that street. It's a quiet street. It's got great views, beautiful houses. And if you wanted to live on the bluff or specifically on that street, there's really no excuse not to get into that market right now, because you've got all three properties that you could want. If you want something that's beautiful and ready, move-in ready, there's the log home that you can do that. If you want to have your own dream home that you've imagined, something brand new, there's a lot that's ready to go, ready to build. And if you're looking for something that maybe you want to put some sweat equity into and do your own fixes or renovations, there's a home that's there ready for that too. So every property class is represented right now on Shoal Lookout if you want to move into that neighborhood.
I agree 100%. I was thinking about opening a brokerage. It's Shoal Lookout Brokerage. We got something for everyone. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. While you're here, maybe you want to check out one of my listings or watch my video about why you should choose me to sell your home.